Texas Young Association. I'm also senior counsel at Schmoyer Reinhardt in San Antonio, Texas. Schmoyer Reinhardt is a labor and employment firm, and I have an appellate role at the firm, which I'm fortunate to have. So I get to work on appeals and litigation support, and I'm currently in the process of expanding my work to help trial lawyers outside of the firm with litigation support and appeals. I'm board certified in civil appellate law and in criminal appellate law, but by far my biggest honor is serving as TYLA president. If you ever need anything from TYLA, we have a lot of resources on our website. Feel free to reach out to me too, either about this presentation or just anything regarding the State Bar or TYLA.
And I'm Cali Franks. I'm super excited to be here. I am a program attorney at Lawline, where I create and curate CLEs for our subscribers all across the United States. I am based in Dallas, Texas, and I currently serve as treasurer for TYLA, which has been such an amazing honor to serve alongside Michael and all the amazing young lawyers in Texas. We are excited to provide you some value with this program. So let's get started. Just a broad overview of some of these assumptions that we will be using going into today's program. So why are we doing this presentation? Well, business development, referrals, retention, relationships, those are all very important to the practice of law. And it's how we get work and successfully hone our skills. But how do we do this? Easier said than done. We try to stay on people's minds. But hopefully at the end of this presentation, we'll give you tangible tips and tricks to make that aspect easier. This presentation will assume that you are well situated in your respective audiences, since that may change your approach or your approaches to this practice of law. While we could do a presentation about how to get and find your audience, this presentation assumes that you've already made your inroads to your particular practice and to your audience area. We're going to do that by focusing on two main areas: direct and indirect or general communication. I'm going to turn it over to Michael now to speak about indirect and general communication and how you can get that on your radar.
Thank you, Callie. I'm going to talk about indirect general communications, and the distinction between the two types of communications that Callie had mentioned is that indirect communication or general communications, it's not a one-to-one communication where you're reaching out to one person in particular. That's Callie's going to cover those types of communications in her section of the presentation today. So to give you some examples of how to make of what an indirect or general communication is, think of social media, where you put something out there for everyone to see, but it's not directed to one particular person. Email campaigns, if you have an email list where you send out, holiday greetings or any sort of updates about your practice, those are general communications, not directed to a particular person. We're going to talk a little bit about different social media platforms, and it's important to understand that different platforms have different audiences, meaning that different groups of people use different social media apps. Not everyone's on Facebook. Not everyone's on Instagram or Twitter or LinkedIn. And so trying to figure out where the geographic trends are is important to understanding how you're going to reach the audience you're trying to reach. The second thing to consider with the different social media apps is the different algorithms that those apps have that cause content to be seen by more people or by less people. And there's a lot of content already available on the internet for how to understand those algorithms and create content on social media that will hit those algorithms right. But there's also a lot that changes pretty constantly. So this is a constantly evolving technique where you have to figure out what's going to do well on the different social media platforms. Social media is also different in how you can interact with people to develop connections and friends. Some social media platforms are more closed, like Facebook, where if you add someone as a Facebook friend, certain people might view it as, oh, that's too personal. I don't use my Facebook for work. Whereas LinkedIn, you could have the exact same message go to the exact same person, and the expectations are going to be slightly different because LinkedIn's more of a professional network where you can connect with people so long as you have a solid hook and a particular reason to connect with that person. Email campaigns, we'll discuss a little bit. I'm going to focus mostly on social media in the rest of the slides. But for email campaigns, it's a process of acquiring the email addresses for different attorneys and updating those email contacts. Young lawyers especially have a lot of movement in their career, and I think that's more truer with millennials than the prior generations, probably even truer with Gen Zers than with millennials. And so for, I think, younger attorneys will tend to use a personal or non-work email address for for receiving a lot of emails with regard to things that don't pertain directly to our work. Other attorneys don't have that system. They'll just use a work email for everything. And so if them with that movement that you see in the practice of law and how other people are moving around, it can be quite an effort to keep everybody's contact information updated. Callie's going to talk about some great tools for that in her part of the presentation. So social media tips. One of the biggest recommendations I can give to y'all is to consider when you're viewing and consuming social media content, keep an eye out for what you notice goes, quote unquote, viral on that particular platform. Usually you'll see something that might come across your social media feed, depending upon whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter, and how you have those apps in your profile set up to receive content. But you might see somebody else's content where they have a high amount of engagement, and you might like it and skim through it and read it and then move on to the next thing. I'd encourage you to look at those types of posts that you see get a lot of engagement and just consider for yourself, why did this particular post get such high engagement? And that can be a variety of things. It could be the person. If it's a celebrity, they're always going to have, relatively high amount of engagement. For other lawyers, if you see what they're doing that goes viral, it's probably tied to the algorithm, and it's a lot of the features that are used in the post and creating that content trigger the algorithm just right to get on more people's feeds. And also, there is some content that has an emotional appeal or some other impact that's just going to naturally attract more engagement and more viewership. When you look at those posts, those videos, those pictures, what you'll notice is that a lot of them use very high quality photos or videos, like professionally done. That's not always, economical for every single social media post. But you tend to notice that the better pictures are going to get more likes, just because people like better quality photos and less photos with poorer quality. Sometimes people might just click on something without or engage with the post without actually reading through it, just because it's a nice picture. Another thing that you can do to make your own posts, your own contents a little bit unique, is to add a new or interesting twist or nugget or Easter egg that put something, your own unique personality, your spin on it, to make it different from what other people are doing, while simultaneously checking all the boxes to make sure that it's engaging content. Another thing I've mentioned just before is having an emotional impact. Things that spark joy are probably the best, although you can go with a negative emotional impact. You'll see a lot of negativity get a lot of engagement because it hits at a point where people are frustrated or angry. I have a personal ethic of not posting anything negative because it kind of brings in more negativity rather than bringing in the positivity. But you do you, whatever works for you and for engaging your particular audience. Another tip is to subtly encourage engagement using those attributes of a good post, a good content on your own social media, by using emotional appeals, subtly encouraging people to engage. And I'll give some examples of that in a bit. The third is to provide information about you that's new and updated. So if you are posting on social media, you have an audience, and then you see somebody in person, that person will say, "Hey, I saw your post on this," and it's a good way to reconnect with that person if you don't really talk to them a whole lot. either in your practice or in bar activities, and it can just be a good way to reconnect with people and sort of transition more into this direct communication that Cali will discuss. Next slide, please. Does that mean? Okay, great. All right, so just to give you some examples of those principles and how you can put them in action, I provided 2 TikTok videos that I did. These are my first 2 TikTok videos, and to my surprise, I kind of just hit the algorithm just right to get on the For You page and to get a lot of views and engagements. Now, this really didn't turn out to be much because I don't create TikTok videos anymore, and I'm not really active on TikTok. But I did pull these examples as demonstrating a lot of what the principle I talked about before. You want to go with what's trending. So in TikTok, it's all about trends, but it's also true on other social media platforms. My first 2 TikTok videos were the Stair Shuffle Challenge and the Magic Microwave Challenge. This was several years ago. But my first TikTok video got 275,000 views and 25,600 engagements. I had no connections on TikTok. I had no friends that added, nothing. It hit the algorithm, got on the For You page, and people started engaging with it, liking it, and that created more engagement. Now, as far as, did this get me anywhere, creating any new connections? Probably not, but, part of my presentation now, so it still had some value. Also a lot of fun to create. So looking at the first one, the Stair Shuffle Challenge. So this was a challenge, it's a dance challenge where you kind of shuffle up the stairs, and a lot of different videos had been done using the right music clip to go with the challenge is important because that's part of the TikTok algorithm. And so using that soundtrack and doing the dance, the nugget or the Easter egg I used and what inspired me to make this video in the first place was there was a historical exhibit at the Bexar County Courthouse here in San Antonio that had a map on the stairs. I also wore my suit while doing it. It was kind of like me dancing up to the courthouse. And nobody had done that before, at least not to my knowledge. It was not on these stairs where there was the map and it looked like I'm like traveling from south to north. So that was something, a new twist, my own take on it that I think the algorithm just right. The other one was the Magic Microwave Challenge, not dressed in my leisure wear, and I was just doing another challenge where you kind of spin in place while using some sort of optical illusion to make it look like you're just on a microwave. It was another trending thing. I did something different on it, and it got more views than I really expected it would. So next slide, please. So adding an emotional appeal. As I said before, people like to engage with what triggers their emotions. And this can be used for good, it can be used for evil. We see that a lot with the news that wants to keep you engaged all the time, and it's all this negativity stuff, negative stuff that evokes emotions of anger and frustration and sadness, fear, worry. Social media is a great place where you can create a positive and fun experience for those in your audience. None of us are news organizations, we're lawyers, we're professionals, and nobody really wants to connect with somebody who's constantly negative, even though that might engage somebody. It's not the type of engagement that you want. An example of emotional appeal that I've done before is my TYLA campaign video, where I essentially did the Elle Woods Harvard admission video essay, kind of a parody of it, and to talk about, instead of why Harvard should accept me, why I was asking people to vote for me for TYLA President. The emotional appeal there was nostalgia in connection to the things that kind of inspired a lot of attorneys of our generation to go to law school. Was this fun and just inspiring film that's just become iconic and classic and very important to all many attorneys of our generation. And so that emotional appeal, I think, attracted a lot of attention to the video, that it was even featured on Above the Law, which was kind of just a nice, interesting, coverage of as TYLA campaign election in just in Texas. Next slide, please. LinkedIn, here's a few samples from LinkedIn that demonstrate the principles I was talking about before. The one on the left and on the right, those are original posts where I'm using a high quality video So notice on the right, I have encouraging engagement, and I asked my LinkedIn connections to vote on which one I should use for my Texas Bar Journal columns and spread. And so people could vote by using the engagement buttons. On LinkedIn, one of the great things about how that works is that you don't have to be a first level connection with somebody to show up on their feed. If somebody who is a mutual connection with other people likes your post, it will show up on those second level connections posts. So if you look down at the bottom of the one on the very right, there was 459 engagements and 53,607 impressions. So that's the number of people who viewed it. I probably got a lot more mileage out of this one than my TikTok video, which had many more views, but this one was more for the audience that I was intending to engage. So on the left is another one that performed kind of well with 8,400 impressions. And it's just me in the Dallas County Courthouse taking a photo, nice photo, and in a suit, looking okay. I guess a lot of people liked it and saw that one. The second one I think is the best post out of all of these because Brianna Chop is a law student here in San Antonio at St. Mary's, and she was putting together this very unique, first of its kind Latina Network Summit with Latina law students and judges and lawyers all coming together in San Antonio. And I was super excited about this. And so I was asked to share it, and I was happy to do so. But looking at the engagements and the impressions, I got 1 like and 217 impressions. I think that's just unjust. But I think it goes to the point of you want to do what's going to work well in the algorithm. And so when people ask you to share their post, that's not necessarily the best thing to get that person the engagement that they're looking for, although it does not hurt. Next slide, please. So the next few slides are going to cover generating content to post on your social media. For a lot of attorneys, all they do is their work, and they're not involved in any bar activities. They really don't do anything outside of billing hours. And so there's not a lot of professional or social updates to announce on social media. But if you are more involved, which is part of this presentation, is to encourage you to get more involved and to do more things, that will allow you to stay on other people's radars more frequently. So this is an example from bar activities. I posted this was the executive committee meeting for TYLA back in July. Next slide. Post about community service. Maybe you're not involved in a bar association, but if you do have Habitat for Humanity on on your own, or any sort of other community involvement, community service, take a photo of it. And it's not just to highlight to others like, oh, I did community service, so kudos to me. It's more about creating, I'm a lawyer, some of you say creating a record, but it's more of creating memories that you can actually go back. And one of the reasons why I do positivity only posts is because I use my my feeds as to cheer me up when I'm having a bad day, and I'll go back through and see things that I've done that are actually beneficial to me. And so, but people, will connect with you on, others who are engaged in community service. If it's a genuine interest to you, then share that interest with others, because it's another way to connect. Next slide, please. Publications, if you're a writer, you like to write on legal issues, that's another good way to generate content to announce. I published a large article in St. Mary's Law Journal, and they, tagged me in their promotion of that law journal. Another way to generate content. Next slide, please. If you give a presentation, sometimes if you're writing an article or presenting at a CLE, you'll have the opportunity to present that research in a variety of different functions. Take photographs, memorialize it, and then post that on your social media accounts. Sometimes you get tired of saying, oh, this person presenting all the time, but it's really about staying relevant, staying on people's minds. And so whenever you do have the opportunity to present, get someone to take a good photo of you that you can post on social media to share what it is that you're up to with your network. Next slide, please. If you happen to win an award or recognized for something, then share that as well. When you're involved in bar activities and you're writing papers and presenting, people are going to think about you more when nominating you for different awards and recognitions. So when you actually receive those awards and recognitions for things you've already put out and onto your feeds and shared with your networks. That's kind of how you develop and progress through different steps to be a recipient of the recognitions and awards, and other people think of you a little bit more when it comes to these types of accolades. Next slide, please. If you're also involved in bar associations or presenting, doing good things in your career, sharing your career successes, you might actually get some media coverage. Share that as well. A lot of people love to see somebody in their own network receive that kind of highlighting from legal sources that cover from news sources that cover legal matters and things that lawyers are up to. So that's always something you want to share with your network, that it's not just you who's promoting you, it's also other people who are recognizing the work that you do. One of the best things that you can share is your work successes and your job change announcements. These seem to get the highest amount of engagement across all sorts of social media platforms. I generally default to Facebook because that was the first one. I'm a OG 04 Facebook member. I created my account in 2004 when I was in college, so it's kind of my default. But these two announcements were probably my highest performing posts, and it came within a few weeks of each other. And one when I was leaving my position at the Court of Appeals. It was very positive, even though I was kind of leaving a job. It was the end. I popped in an old photo. I'd taken that before. It wasn't that I was like leaving the courthouse and posing for this nice photo. But it just kind of fit perfectly with the emotion that I was feeling, and it was kind of, I was leaving the courthouse, but I was happy, and it's a professional photo and looks good. And I created a list of all the things I was able to do while there and just expressing gratitude. My highest performing post got over 700 likes on Facebook. So that was a high performing post for me. The other reason why I think that post did well is because I didn't tell anybody where I was going, and that was intentional. And the idea was to keep them engaged, because I got a lot of questions of like, "Whoa, where are you going? Oh my gosh, you left the court. What are you going to do next?" And all this stuff, and people wanted to know the answer. So when I posted this follow-up content, a few weeks later, that also performed very, very well with over 600 engagements. Next slide. If you're maybe if you don't have the time to write a full law review article or even a CLE paper, or are interested in writing shorter blurbs, a blog can be a great way to establish your knowledge and your mastery of your own particular field. I have an appellate blog called Appeals to Authority that it used to be the Fourth Court Updates blog, but since I left the court, I created I transitioned the blog to be a broader topics of coverage, include Supreme Court updates and other information about the practice of appellate law. Next slide, please. Podcast, if you have an opportunity to either create your own podcast or be interviewed on a podcast, take it. It's kind of an interesting setup because you're just kind of talking to these microphones with somebody across the table asking you questions, but it is actually a really wonderful and rewarding experience. But it's also a way to generate content that you can put up on your social media and share with your networks. Next slide, please. As I said before, a good photo goes a long way in terms of getting engagement. So another big recommendation I have is to invest in professional photography. It can be pretty expensive, but you can probably get a good photographer for about $250 an hour. You have that type of money to invest in professional headshots. I recommend that you hire a professional photographer who can take and edit really good photos. During my photo shoots, I've done several now, and I realize that I get the best photos when I am relaxed, I'm being silly, and we take just a variety of different photos in different settings. And it's not about getting the perfect picture, it's about enjoying the experience. And I'll show you a few more of those in the next couple of slides. Next slide, please. So be creative. So I just took, just being very silly and trying to just do different things. Maybe I'll never post these or nobody will ever see them, although they're in this presentation, so people are seeing them. But in terms of actually using these to generate engagement, you never know when a photo might be the perfect thing that you need to get to go with the message. And that's going back to my Facebook post where I was announcing that I was leaving the fourth Court of Appeals. So I'm actually using the second one in my presentation to the TYLA board later this week. So because it goes perfectly with the particular slide. So the more options that you give yourself rather than 130 different kind of similar headshots wearing the same clothes in the same place with the same smile, like having a broader range of professional photos to pull from is a good use of that time with photographer. Next slide. In generating content to now, I've talked about professional accomplishments, but it's also important that your network understands who you are as a person and what you value. And so if you do things socially, get good photos from it, it's creating a record for yourself of what you've done even socially, brings back good memories, like those positive feelings that you can put out there to your network will allow your connections to get to know you a little bit better, be more interested in who you are as a person, because it's not always, who's board certified or who's published, it's about who they know, who they like, who they connect with. And so you're putting out social content, even on your professional, more professional social media accounts is still a good way to stay on people's minds and get them to know you a little bit better. Next slide, please. Going back to investing in professional photo shoots. This one is just from my family from the holidays. We can go to the next slide, please. So I'm going to shift from like tips in creating social media content to, and what you should look for in posting it and how to get good engagement to the actual nitty-gritty of creating the content and managing that content. TYLA uses a social media post scheduler. If you work with the bar association or if you have if you're the responsibility at your own firm, using a social media post scheduler is a great way to create a bunch of content at one time, schedule it, and not have to worry about it for a couple of months. We use Hootsuite. It's here's a sample of from Sunday through Saturday, different posts that we have scheduled. That content was created beforehand. And it just allows us to streamline the process and work more efficiently because we can handle it all together. Other options to use are Content Cow, which is an Adobe product, and later Cali Franks introduced me to those, but I've not actually used them because we use primarily Hootsuite. A couple of cautions on these social media post schedulers is that they can be kind of expensive if you're using them for professional purposes. I find that having certain days like Throwback Thursday or Wellness Wednesday or Funny Friday is kind of limiting because you're trying to force content to go at a particular time period when in reality it's best to go with what's trending in the moment, what do people care about on that particular day, and that can change from day to day. The extreme example of that is whenever you post something ahead of time that's not political, something comes up in politics and then it's in the news and you didn't intend for it to be political, but it is all of a sudden, and then people are wondering, perhaps it's very inconsistent with who you are, or perhaps it may be offensive or insensitive. You kind of worry about those issues as well. Next slide. So for a lot of social media posts, if you're trying to post different photos, a consolidation of photos, or something that just like looks a little different than just a basic photo, I highly recommend Canva. You can have a free account on there where you can do a lot. There's a lot of free templates that you can use where it really is kind of like editing a Word document where you pull up the template. You can see some of the examples on the left part of that photo, where you just insert the photo, you can type in the text, save it to your desktop, post it into your social, or insert it into your social media content, and it looks a little bit more engaging. You can also use Adobe Spark and Adobe product. Disney is another one that you can use. I think those require paid payment. I'm not sure they're free versions of those, but you can check out those tools as well. Next slide, please. For websites and blogging, there's a lot of very user-friendly web hosts and tools that you can use. I use Wix for my blog. because it is kind of like editing a Word document. If you want to change something or move something around, you just click it and you move it, you drag and you drop it. Squarespace is also very easy to use, but it gives you a little bit less flexibility. And WordPress, if you're more advanced, you can do a whole lot more with WordPress than I think with these more user-friendly ones. But I like it to keep things simple. So I use Wix for my blog because it is, you can integrate it with social media. So whenever I do a blog post and put it on the website, I then have the option to share it on all of my social media platforms. Next slide, please. If you are in charge of a podcast, I've never done my own podcast, but I worked on them through TYLA. Some of the tools that you can use if you're creating the podcast. So there's kind of 3 components to having your own podcast. 1 is recording the podcast, 2 is editing it, and 3 is hosting it. So recording it is just having an interview with a microphone with someone, maybe they're across the table. But in the pandemic, we've learned that Zoom works for a lot. You can record on Zoom a lot of different conversations you have or formal interviews, and then you can extract the audio file to then edit. So if you're interviewing with somebody and you're like, oh no, I messed up or whatever, you can slice that out using, we use Audacity. It's a very user-friendly way to edit audio tracks to get them ready for hosting on different platforms such as Buzzsprout, where you upload the podcast episode to Buzzsprout or your podcast host, and it distributes it to all of the places where you can access podcast episodes, such as on various phones, various apps that we have on our phones. Next slide, please. All right, so just a few takeaways. This slide is kind of ugly because I didn't have the inclination to kind of make a graphic, because it'd be really hard to make a graphic of this. But the takeaway from this slide is that your content builds on itself. I alluded to this before in talking about, if you have a work success, like maybe you win a motion for summary judgment, you post that, or you win a trial. Maybe there was an interesting legal issue in a trial. So you have this legal issue that's kind of in your head. You can also maybe get media coverage from your success, whether it's a trial or on appeal or any sort of coverage like that. So once you have a legal issue, maybe you pair that with a bar activity, and bar associations put on presentations. So you can combine that to give a CLE presentation. Giving a CLE presentation, oftentimes there's a paper that you can do with the CLE presentation that you can turn into a law review article, or you could take it and turn it into shorter bits for a blog. Once you have articles, bar activities, work successes, media coverage, that's where you get awards and recognitions, media coverage, and it kind of all builds on itself as a way to kind of just generate more social media content. And so it really is about becoming having a fully developed approach to staying on your network's radar, continuing to give them information about who you are and what you're doing, and that you are the lawyer in your area that they should go to if they ever have a question. It's a good way to stay on others' radars. Next slide. We'll cover these pretty quickly because I've gone over my half. Sorry, Cali, Franks. So last few takeaway tips: be you. A lot of times we see lawyers and say, oh, in order to be successful, I have to be like that lawyer, and that's just not true. I think we're all at our best when we're being our authentic selves, and that we're going to be the happiest and the best lawyers that we can be if we're being true to ourselves rather than what other people think we should be. Be the best you. Do things that are memorable, are fun. Life's always better when you're having fun and being creative and sharing things with your network. Keep an eye out for what other people are doing that are successful, and instead of trying to look like them or do what they're doing, use the techniques that they're using to be yourself, to promote yourself to your network. Take advantage of all that bar activities have to offer. If you're not involved in a bar association, it's a great way to get things like CLE presentation opportunities, i.e. this one that I'm giving right now. I probably wouldn't be here if I wasn't involved in bar activities. Invest in professional photography and plan out a photo shoot for what you want, and just be creative and have fun with it. And share all that you're doing on social media and through your mail blast to stay in touch with your networks.
Awesome. So we have one question that came through, Michael, really quick for you. What platform has been most fruitful for you? which do you enjoy making the most content for, and is cross-posting something you would recommend?
LinkedIn, I've gotten the most mileage out of professionally. I have the biggest following on LinkedIn. It's like close to 9,000. And I think that it's mostly lawyers, and because I'm an appellate lawyer, that's connecting to my audience, which is trial lawyers, maybe in-house counsel. So that's probably been the best one for me to use professionally. If I was just going based on how can I get more people to look at me, I think TikTok, has the highest numbers, but that's not really what I'm going for in using social media. There was a second part of that question was about cross-posting.
Yes.
Yeah, so when you're using a social media planner like Hootsuite, one of the values of that is it's going to post the same thing to all social media platforms. In reality, it's probably that, like, you're using best, practices. It's probably like different stuff's going to do well on some platforms and not well on others. And so you could spend all the time trying to tailor your posts to the different audiences on the different platforms for like the same event, but it's just too much time. So it's best to just kind of to post across the different platforms. And there's a third part of that question, Kelly.
What do you enjoy making the content for the most? What platform?
Ooh, probably TikTok. I just don't have the time for it.
Awesome. Well, thank you. That's all the questions we have, but please continue to ask questions throughout my part of this presentation. For myself or Michael, we're always happy to take those questions. So now I'm going to kind of switch directions onto more of a direct communications that can help you in your connections. So what do I mean when I say direct communications? Well, Michael talked a lot about ways you can market yourself and network yourself on a general and indirect way. I'll be talking more about like managing those relationships and making them sticky. You can make a relationship sticky and your connection sticky by very pointed, specific interactions that are regular, authentic, and valuable. But that's easier said than done. So we'll talk a bit more about that. And we've heard all about rainmakers, a lawyer who, through their wide connections in the community, gets a great deal of business for themselves and their law firms. They create the rain by generating referrals and work from their contacts by the relationships they build from their contacts. Referrals, networking, making connections, word of mouth, these are all ways that you can market yourself and your firm. These are all things that Michael has talked about. Michael discussed helping you establish that initial contact, but a true rainmaking or business development comes from the relationships you build after you make that initial contact. Developing a business relationship, like any other relationship, will not happen overnight. I'll give you some tangible tips and tricks to retain personal information about others, dig deep to find connections, reconnect with your connections, and provide valuable interactions to your relationships. So let's get started. Let's get sticky. We've all heard the saying that you can build a better mousetrap, but if the world doesn't know about it, they'll beat a path right around your door. People need to know what you do, and they need to think you're enthusiastic about what you do. That's why restaurants and others put billboards on the side, on the highway. And Michael talked about a great way to create those billboards and make people aware of your brand and specific mousetrap. Now let's talk about what I mean by getting sticky. Life's biggest opportunities, gifts, lessons are found in your connection with others. It's easy to think that you have it all together when you're out posting in the open, yet it's through your connections to other people that you find your biggest reward. This is all great, Cali, right? What do I mean and how do I get sticky? I promise you, I'm going to tell y'all. So networking isn't developing business, it's creating relationships. How do you do that? First and foremost, you do it authentically. Authenticity is the new currency. As we become more evolved into the social media persona world, the tighter we cling on to the authenticity of those around us and how we put authenticity above a lot of things in our relationships. Well, I'm not saying you have to have ulterior motives or having a different motive is bad. Looking for your next client, your next business opportunity, it's something we all should be doing. And it's something that really allows us to hone our skills. But creating a true relationship, those two things are not mutually exclusive. But creating a relationship can be scary, and there's no perfect science behind it. But there are some tips, and that's information retention. You have to know the person you're connecting with. That's digging deeper, finding that nugget, that kernel of true common connection that you can build out of, Reconnecting when life gets busy and people become on trips or trials or anything in between. Reconnecting is very important to ensuring that that connection is true and deep, and providing value. These are all things that we can break down into tasks that you do on a daily basis to improve and create relationships. And I have a few tips on how to do that. So let's start with the first one, information retention. We're living in an extremely busy world with tons of personal responsibilities and appointments. The speed of life is increasingly rising, which forces us to limit the time we spend with friends and family. At the same time, the modern world has given us a variety of helpful tools to manage our business and personal relationships. And here are some of my favorite that I use on a daily basis. The first is business cards, but not in the traditional sense. We've all know business cards. I remember still getting my first business card as an attorney and thinking like I had made it because it said Cali Franks attorney on it. And then I quickly lost every business card I owned and every business card I've received since then. But business cards are easy ways to leave a mark in a networking event. They make it easier for people to meet you, connect with you, and remember you after the event. If only there was a way that I could remember those pesky little business cards that end up at the bottom of my purse, filled with junk, and 10 months later, I pull it out and think, oh, I could have used this. However, you awkwardly search for your first business card when someone asks for it. So you're scrambling. Maybe you don't have your business cards. Maybe you left them in the car. Maybe your firm hasn't ordered you new ones. Or second, you lose someone's business card, so you can't follow up with them the next day. So you're attending a network event and you stumble across a really cool connection. You connect on multiple levels, or they say, hey, I could use an attorney that does appeals. Could you help me out? And you don't have a business card. No fear, you probably have your phone on you. And that's the problem of exchanging contact information and what else using paper business cards, especially in the pandemic. So how can you do it with your phone? Using NFC technology and QR codes, Popple, which you see on the screen here, has helped exchange contact details in seconds using the NFC technology. I'm not going to pretend I know what NFC technology is. I am merely reading what they say on their website. But also they use QR codes, as you can see here too. What you do is you would scan that, and information such as your phone number, your email address, your social media handles, your websites, even files and videos can be exchanged at just a tap or a scan. This is the age of the new tap to share business card. So that sounds great. But what happens when you scan or tap your Popple? This pops up. To share contact information with others, this technology is very simple to use. Popple's users only need to create a profile once, activate their Popple device on the mobile app, and then you can tap and share. So what would happen is if, let's say, Jane Smith walks up to me, taps my Popple, share your information with Cali Franks would pop up on the screen. She would send me her name, her email address, and her phone number, and I would get an email with all of that information in it. Conversely, she can add my information, my LinkedIn, my contact card. She can even peruse lawline.com simply by tapping that and putting it on their screen. So immediately you're exchanging contact information and you're getting the information you need without having to worry about, did I bring enough business cards? And am I going to lose this business card by the end of the night? So after this happens, like I said, you get an email. Popple follows up with you and reminds you of your connection and ensures you've connected with them. Hey, you have a new connection. Here's their name, their number, the date you connected with them, and it also tells you the location of which you connected with them. So if you are a busy bee and you are browsing around and you don't remember where you met that person, there's a geolocation tag that will tell you you met this person at the Hilton in San Antonio, and you can remember, yes, I was there at a conference at that date and time, and I remembered this contact now. Super simple, super cool, and it's got rave reviews from those of my friends who have those. Myself, I love them. It's been a really cool experience and a way to kind of elevate your business card. Let's also talk about what you do with this information once you've gotten it from your Popple. So there are traditional customer relationship management tools. They usually refer to dealing with business clients in a sales setting. You may have heard them called CRMs, and anybody in the sales world will know exactly what that's talking about. It helps you organize your personal and professional tools. I use this professionally, exclusively, since I am not in the sales business, but it has been tremendously helpful for me being able to keep up with my connections and ensure that I continue to foster them. So a personal CRM is a suite of tools and features to streamline your communications, organize your daily life, receive reminders about upcoming events, and about people you haven't connected with lately. Your personal CRM system allows you to organize private and professional network circles. It provides you an address book to preserve important contact information, a calendar to organize your professional and work events and deadlines, as well as a notebook to create your to-do list circled around your connections. This is specifically tailored to your needs, so a personal CRM is a great way to nurture your relationships and find that much needed work-life balance. Besides storing your important information in personal relationship managers, they can send you reminders about upcoming events, deadlines, meetings, personal affairs, businesses, the connection time a year ago that you met this person. The possibilities are endless. Cooper is the CRM that I personally use, so I'm going to show you what that looks like and how I translate that into the connections that I make. So this CRM in particular integrates with G Suite, which is important for data input. When I send an email directly to someone, I can add them to Cooper, which then triggers an automation workflow that I've created, which I will get into later of what that automation workflow looks like. So what you can see on my screen here is an email. I just click on the Cooper logo and I can add this person directly to my Cooper account. And what happens is I've created a personal automation workflow, which looks a bit like what I'll show you in a second. And what happens with that workflow is as soon as this person is added to my Cooper account by clicking that save at the below, two things happen. I get an alert when it's been 60 days without communicating with this individual, and I get an alert when it has been 90 days without communicating with this individual, and then I get an alert in 30 days after I add this to make sure I add them as a LinkedIn contact. This keeps at least a 3 to 6 month ratio if I know that people are I'm going to interact with them in some level, in some consistency. And after that, you can decide if maybe I haven't talked to them in 90 days because there's nothing to talk to them about. Or maybe you can say, I wonder how their kids, play ended 2 weeks ago because I know they were really busy. I can follow up with them doing that. So what happens when I put them in my CRM is it looks like this. It's important that this integrates with G Suite. It also integrates with Outlook, and there's a lot of other things that can happen. So it's important to keep that in mind when you're picking your CRM if you want to. But this CRM keeps track of every email and every calendar invite for this particular individual. It makes it super easy for me to add notes and to pull up prior conversations and discussions quickly. I can see here I've had 23 interactions with this individual. The last time I contacted them, or the last contact we had, was 5/10 of 2022. And it's been 9 days of inactivity since I've talked to them. Super easy to manage and know exactly where you stand within the CRM of a certain individual person. So it's important that you know when they integrate. So let's move on. We have all the information, we have the documents, we have the surface level of someone through Popple, through CRM, and other exchange of information. So guess what? The person on the dating apps can get the same information that you just got as well. But why do people hate dating apps in the first few dates of a relationship? Because it's all surface level. I'm engaged, and knowing I will never have to tell another person what my favorite color is during a date at a pizza place is truly a rewarding piece I wish for each of you. So the same can be said for your connections within your CRMs or within your relationships. You have the same information as every other person has access to. It's nothing special, but it's super easy to make it something special. Now that I have this information in a CRM tool that you've set up to do automatic check-ins to remind you to connect after different dates in different ways, there's a trick I use to ensure that my reach outs are deep and authentic, and that is using Google Alerts. It's a free notification service provided by Google that sends emails to subscribers that summarize the search activity around search terms. So that could be recent news articles or other web content containing a search term that you include in your Google Alert. Users can set the notifications to come daily, weekly, monthly, whatever you want. So what does this look like? The way I use it is I set for my people in the CRM to alert me if something happens. Now, I've set Google Alerts for key professionals with whom I want to stay in touch with, and finding a reason to email them is no longer a problem. So for example, Julian is an influencer that Lawline has hired to promote Lawline. I get a Google alert every time something that captures on the internet. This case, he has an article that was written on him at EIN News. I was able to send him an email and be like, congrats on the news article. So happy to see you being successful. And I quickly sent a congratulatory email. And not only is he touched that I took the time to reach out, he was also impressed with how quickly I'd heard about the news. This is a 21st century networking tip that covers all the major ways to connect. Well, you can use this as a networking tool. You can also use it to keep tabs on yourself or your competitors, whatever works best for you. So we have all these wonderful things to keep connected, but you could be the master of every networking event that you attend. But if you don't follow up, you will fail at truly building connections. People are busy and you don't connect often with them, you'll be forgotten. Following up establishes your connection and opens up a line of communication that you can send them messages in the future. After that, try to follow up every quarter with acquaintances and at least once per month with people you're really trying to build a relationship with. It's easier said than done with all of our busy days. However, I have one trick for that. Snoozing. At first, I started using this function when I was practicing law as a reminder to follow up with opposing counsels on deadlines. I took this into account into my current position, and it's been very successful in networking. The premise is simple. When you receive an email and you can't instantly file it away forever, as you ought to with the likes of updates and notifications from clients and colleagues, things that don't matter, which don't require a reply, but which you can take action on right now with one click of a button, you can snooze on it for as long as you need to. The email is stored away in a specifically created Gmail folder, and also this can be done in Outlook, and it resurfaces at the top of your inbox when the snooze time elapses. You can opt for a snooze period of your choice. So additional options include the ability to only activate the snooze alarm if no one's replied to your email thread, making a perfect follow-up by prompting you to follow up if the connection doesn't get back in touch, and so on and so forth. Anytime you need to, you can review the list of snooze emails and pull them back into your inbox whenever you want to. The way this plays out is if someone says, yeah, I would love to get coffee with you in February, I would take that email, I would snooze it until mid-January. And in mid-January, I would send an email that would be, it would remind me, it would be in my inbox. I would send an email that says, just following up on our coffee chat, would love to grab coffee with you when you get a chance. Super easy, simple, and you'll always remember what to do. The next is the CRM that I touched on a few slides ago. That is connecting via LinkedIn in 30 days, following up in 6 months, and follow up in 3 months. These are triggered automatically when I add anybody to my Cooper or my CRM, so that it allows me to stay on top. The last piece is to add value. Not every conversation you have with a connection is valuable to either or both the parties. However, providing value can make you stand out. Another tip of my good friend Google Alerts. Not only can you set your alerts for people and businesses, but for topics and practice areas. This is a fun way to provide value to your connections and help them out if they're looking for a particular case study or if they're looking for a specific item, add it to a Google alert. If it comes through, pass it along. Another way is to become a subject matter expert. When you think about it, people go to assistants and turn to when people need help are most likely those who have been seen to be most excited about their work. You need to realize that sounding enthusiastic and being enthusiastic are likely to attract people to you. Writing example we heard of from Michael is one example. Giving public talks, as Michael and I are doing today, or is another example of doing that. But being a subject matter expert is good for professional development. After all, the more relied upon a subject matter expert becomes, the more valuable they are to their companies. In order to become a true subject matter expert, you must possess more than just training and experience. Establishing credibility and executive presence requires more than just accumulated knowledge. So what does that mean? All in all, if you're given opportunities to present and speak, be sure to add them to your resume, talk about them on your social media, share your experiences, and most importantly, always be mindful for who you can send your course, your articles, your classes, etc. to, in an effort to provide them value and to further your sticky relationship. So here are some takeaways. That was a lot. So incorporate a way to retain information easier. Use that information to form a deeper relationship using Google Alerts, following up and reconnecting with your connections, using snooze on your emails and on your CRMs, task triggers, and finally providing value by being viewed as a subject matter expert and sharing that with your connections. These are all ways that have been very valuable to myself in establishing and creating sticky relationships with individuals. And also it's important that you understand where you come from is as important as how you create your relationships. So you heard me talk about authenticity as the new currency, and I truly believe that to be the case. And like I said, additionally at the beginning, I want to remind you that wanting to grow your business and wanting to have professional connections and professional developments and professional opportunities and being authentic are not exclusive to one another. I don't want you to leave this presentation thinking that if you only want business, it's not being authentic. It is. And you can just be true to that and to yourself when you're creating these connections and ensuring that they last and are sticky for many, many months to come. And years, and potentially your next client that promotes you to partner, and maybe you'll be seen as the rainmaker in your firm as well. So thank you all again for attending. I noticed a question in the Q&A coming. Let's see.
You want me to get this for you?
Yes.
Okay, so the question is, this is being recorded. Will this recording be available later for those who want to come back to it? Because it's a lot of great information.
El Presidente of TYLA, I guess I will punt to you to see if that is something we can do.
Approved.
All right, well, great. And again, thank you all so much for attending. I have put the CLE number in the chat. As a reminder, you need to self-report that CLE number to the state bar for 1 hour of CLE credit. Mine and Michael's information is on the screen. Please feel free to reach out to myself or Michael via email. Or any other means of communication. And hopefully when I see all of y'all next, y'all have a popple and we can just exchange that way. But again, we appreciate it. Be on the lookout for some more TYLA CLE programs that are upcoming, and I will leave the last words for Michael.
Thank you, Cali. Thanks everyone for joining us today. I hope you have a great afternoon. If you have any questions or anything you want to talk to us about, whether it's this presentation, being a young lawyer, or marketing or anything like that, just feel free to reach out. We're here to help.